Let's go.
Hi, I'm Scott with Michigan Pool News, and I'm with Dr. Stan Pickens with AccuTab. Doctor, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have a PhD in inorganic chemistry, and I've been in the water treatment field since 1994.
Oh, great, great. Well, that's what we're going to talk about is it's chemicals this month and water testing, and we're going to talk a little bit about TDS. What is TDS?
TDS stands for total dissolved solids. Those are the solids that are actually, as the name says, dissolved in the water. They're so much a part of the water that they don't scatter light or anything. They're not apparent typically to the naked eye unless they happen to be colored materials.
And what does an operator have to worry about with TDS?
TDS could be an indication of a couple of things, or they could be of concern to an operator for a few reasons. First of all, if the operator is regularly calculating the water balance, the Langmuir saturation index, one of the components that the operator needs to take into account is the TDS, or the ionic strength of the water. So if they don't have a measure on that, then they can't get as accurate a determination of the water balance. They take into account the pH, the alkalinity, the hardness, and then secondarily the temperature and the TDS, and if they don't have those numbers, it affects the accuracy of the calculation. So that's one consideration. Secondly, some components of the TDS may contribute to corrosiveness to metal surfaces in the heater or in stainless steel components in the pool. And so it can be desirable to monitor TDS and not let it get too high because of possible issues with corrosivity. And then thirdly, and the main reason, is that TDS can serve as an indirect indicator of deeper, potentially sanitary considerations with the pool, or health issues with the water. There could be an accumulation of bather waste, or of microbial waste, or biological waste of some sort accumulating in the water. There could be disinfection byproducts that are accumulating in the water. These products could be irritating, in some cases even carcinogenic. And so you don't want them to accumulate to really high levels. And often you can't measure these disinfection byproducts very precisely, or very easily, with the equipment that a pool operator has. So an indirect indicator can be useful. The TDS serves as an indirect indication that stuff has been accumulating in the water. If these measurable dissolved solids have been accumulating, probably there's been an accumulation of disinfection byproducts, bather waste, and things like that.
How does an operator check for that accumulation? How do they test for it?
Typically, what they use is a conductivity meter. If they were literally to try to measure all of the total dissolved solids, what they would do would be to take a water sample, filter it to get the suspended solids out of there, get the weight on that water, evaporate it down to dryness, weigh the solid residue that remains.
Chemistry test.
Very tedious. Nobody does that. It would just be too much work and too many opportunities for error. So what an operator does in practice is to use a conductivity meter. He may not know it's a conductivity meter, but the meter he sticks into the water that may read directly in TDS is running a small electric current through the water and measuring the resistance of the water, or inversely, the conductivity of the water. The more dissolved ionic solids there are in the water, the higher the conductivity, and so the higher the reading on the meter. And that will generally be proportional to the actual TDS level.
How often should he do that? It sounds like this takes time.
It can take a few minutes to run a test, so it doesn't need to be run very often. Typically, TDS will not drift up very quickly. It may take a month or months before it changes enough to cause any concern. The pending Model Aquatic Health Code recommends checking quarterly. APSP 11, the American National Standard for Recreational Water Quality in Public Pools and Spas, does not specify a specific test frequency, but indicates that the operator should know what the TDS is at all times. If there's enough testing history to know the rate of drift season to season, then the operator can determine for himself how often he needs to test to know what it is at all times.
And if it gets, because it doesn't sound like a lot of good stuff, how do they get rid of it?
Now there's where the challenge comes in. There's not something that you can just add to the water and take out the TDS to an appreciable extent. So typically what people have to do is drain and replace water. And if the makeup water is very low in TDS, then the TDS level in the pool will drop in proportion to the amount of water drained and replaced. In some places, a pool operator may not have that option because of severe limitations on fresh available water. So in those situations, they may have access to traveling reverse osmosis units that come to the pool, run the water through reverse osmosis. There'll be a retentate water that's concentrating those dissolved solids that then the operator of the RO unit will have to dispose of separately. But those solids are out of the pool now. The water goes back into the pool without those solids, and they've reduced the TDS level in the
And there's a
pool.
little bit of freshwater displacement even with RO systems, if I recall right.
Yeah, since some of the water is retained and carries those dissolved solids and then goes to waste somehow, the amount of water that goes back to the pool is less than is taken out, and so even then some makeup water would have to be added.
What role does turbidity play in a swimming pool compared to TDS? I know that's almost like two questions.
Yeah, well, the turbidity comes not from the dissolved solids, but from the suspended solids, solids that have come out of solution in water or never were in solution. So directly there's no relationship between those two, though solids that are dissolved today may come out of solution tomorrow as suspended solids and contribute to light scattering or cloudiness of the water. The turbidity can be of concern for a number of reasons. First of all, most directly to a lifeguard. If he can't see the bottom of the pool everywhere clearly at all times, a bather could be in distress and could drown before they're detected. That would be a real tragedy. But there are indirect concerns as well. If the water is turbid, it could be an indication of various possible problems. For instance, there could be a water balance issue. Maybe calcium carbonate is coming out of solution and the water balance needs to be addressed because it's scaling water. And you could have rough surfaces, you could have a heater that scales over, other problems could develop. It could be that that fine suspended matter that's clouding the pool water is the beginning of an algae growth, an incipient algae bloom. And if it's not treated right away, you could have the water turning green, and it could be not just hazy, it could be downright opaque in a very short period of time. It could be a bacterial infestation or some other microbial infestation that would be a serious sanitation issue that would need to be addressed immediately. It could be an indication that the filters are not doing their job, that they're not doing the things that you need a filter to do to have good, clear sanitary water. There could be torn fabric in a DE filter or a cartridge filter. There could be channeling in a sand filter. But somehow the filter may not be doing its job, and solids that you don't take out of the pool and get rid of in a backwash or a cleaning cycle, those are solids that you got to deal with in the pool, and maybe your chlorine demand goes up because of that.
Is there a way to measure turbidity? Or is that an eyesight thing? Or
there are various ways of measuring turbidity. Some of them are fairly direct, just how much cloudiness is there in the water. One common rough qualitative indication is to just take a look through the pool water. Can you see the main drain, the floor drain, with crystal clarity, see every line on it? If you can, chances are the clarity is good enough for at least for the lifeguarding. It's not a very quantitative measure. If there's no main drain, the operator may throw in a Secchi disc, circle about 8 inches across, often with a checkerboard pattern, 4 quadrants, black, white, alternating. And if that goes into the deepest part of the pool, you can clearly see the boundaries. It's a good sign, but it's qualitative. If you want a more quantitative indication, there are a few methods that are available. One is a loss of optical transmittance, or light not transmitting through the water well. There are portable test meters that commonly can test turbidity sort of indirectly that way, and the reason I say indirectly is there's more than one contributor to a loss of transmittance through the water. One is turbidity, but color in the water could also contribute. So these transmittance methods are somewhat indirect. A more direct method is a nephelometer. And that's a meter in which light shines in from one direction, and then light is detected scattering out at right angles to that. Those measure true turbidity of the water and can give very precise readings of the turbidity, the actual cloudiness. They don't respond so much to the absorption by colored impurities, but they give a strong reading to any scattering of light by turbidity due to particles suspended in the water.
Yeah, but more than likely it's a growth issue or filtration issue if they've got severe
Yeah,
turbidity.
there are various possible causes, as we said, and chances are it's something that really needs to be addressed.
Well, thanks for doing this for Michigan Pool News. I appreciate it, Stan. It's great. It's always good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you, Scott.
And we're going to have AccuTab's website below if you'd like to see more about their feeders and their chlorine systems. Thank you for viewing Michigan Pool News.